Shalom, everyone, and welcome to Torah School. Yeah, my name is Eric Allen Tittle. I will be with you as your host. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Tonight's portion for Torah is Wayakhel. Yeah, and so he assembled. So this comes from, and Moshe assembled the dwelling place, if you will. We are reading today Exodus 35, starting in verse 1, and then continuing all the way through until the end of the book, Exodus 40, verse 38. And thank you all for joining us tonight. If I can remember how to push these buttons here, I'll get myself back on here instead of the, there we go. Alright, I got a new toy, had to play with it, make sure it worked. Alright, thank you very much for joining us tonight here at Shalom Assembly of Yahweh, Torah School. And without further ado, we will begin reading Exodus chapter 35. And Moshe assembled all the congregation of the children of Israel, and said to them, These are the words which Yahweh commanded you to do. Work is done for 6 days, but on the 7th day it shall be set apart to you a Sabbath of rest. And a Sabbath of rest, anyone doing work on it is put to death. So, we have Moshe's first thing, words come out of his mouth when he comes down from the mountain the second time is a reminder of the Sabbath. He says, work is done for 6 days, but on the 7th day it shall be set apart to you a Sabbath of rest. Last week we discussed and found out that the gold that they used to make the calf was the gold from when they were in Mitzrayim, when they were in Egypt. And when they were in Egypt, they were slaves. And of course, the Sabbath is given so that we are reminded that we were slaves, and now we have a day of rest. Of course, the Sabbath was created way back at the time of creation. That's true. But we also have, when Moshe gave this, the commandment of the Sabbath, he reminded us that you were slaves in Mitzrayim, and so therefore you will observe a 7th-day rest, and also, furthermore, that is why we have the Hebrew slaves, the Hebrew servants, always being set free. But now Moshe says here, anyone doing any work on it is put to death. Do not kindle a fire in any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. And Moshe spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, This is the word which Yahweh commanded, saying, Take from you a contribution to Yahweh. Everyone whose heart moves him, let him bring it as a contribution to Yahweh, gold and silver and bronze and blue and purple and scarlet material, even fine linen and goat's hair, and ram skin dyed red, and fine leather, and acacia wood, and oil for the light, and spices for the anointing oil, and for the sweet incense, and shoham stones, and stones to be set in the shoulder garment, and in the breastplate, and let all the wise-hearted men among you come, and make all that Yahweh has commanded. The dwelling place, its tent, its covering, its hooks, its boards, its bars, its columns, and its sockets, the ark, its poles, the lid of atonement, and the veil of the covenant, covering, the table, and its poles, and all its utensils, and the showbread, and the lampstand for the light, and its light utensils, and its lamps, and the oil for the light, and the incense altar, and its poles, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, and the covering for the door, and the entrance of the dwelling place, the altar of burnt offering, with its bronze grating, its poles, and all its utensils, the basin, and its stand, the screens of the courtyard, its columns, and their sockets, and the covering for the gate of the courtyard, the pegs of the dwelling place, and the pegs of the courtyard, and their cords, the woven garments to do service in the set-apart place, the set-apart garments for Aharon the priest, and the garments of his sons to serve as priests. And all the congregation of the children of Israel withdrew from the presence of Moshe, and everyone whose heart lifted him up, and everyone whose spirit came to him, and they brought the contribution to Yahweh for the work of the tent of meeting, for all its service, and all the set-apart garments. And they came, both men and women, whose heart moved them, and they brought earrings, and nose rings, and necklaces, all golden goods, even everyone who made a wave offering of gold to Yahweh. And every man in whom was found blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine linen, and goat's hair, and ram skin dyed red, and fine leather, brought them. Everyone who would make a contribution to Yahweh of silver or bronze brought it. And everyone with whom was found acacia wood for any work of the service brought it. And all the wise-hearted women spun yarn with their hands, and brought what they had spun, the blue and the purple and the scarlet material, and the fine linen. And the women whose hearts moved them up in wisdom spun the goat's hair. And the rulers brought shoham stones, and the stones to be set in the shoulder garment and the breastplate, and the spices, and the oil for the light, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense. The children of Israel brought a voluntary offering to Yahweh, all the men and women whose hearts moved them to bring all kinds of work which Yahweh by the hand of Moshe had commanded to be done. And Moshe said to the children of Israel, See, Yahweh has called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehudah, and he has filled him with the spirit of Elohim, in wisdom, in understanding, and in knowledge, and in all work, to make designs for the work in gold, and silver, and in bronze, and in cutting of stones, for setting, and in carving wood, and to work all workmanship of design. And he has put in his heart the ability to teach him, and Oliahab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, and he has filled them with skill to do all work of the engraver, and the designer, and embroiderer, in blue, and in purple, and in scarlet material, and in fine linen, and a weaver doing any work, and makers of designs. So now he's called by name two people to direct the work. He's given them the skill to do the work, and he's telling them to do the work. And he's also commanded everyone to give a contribution. This is a voluntary contribution. And they gave the gold and the silver and the material voluntarily as a chance to repent of the evil that they did with the other gold. Now they're bringing gold for the set-apart place. And Bezalel and Oliahab and every wise-hearted man in whom Yahweh has given wisdom and understanding to know how to do all work for the service of the set-apart place shall do according to all that Yahweh has commanded. And Moshe called Bezalel and Aholiab and every wise-hearted man in whose heart Yahweh had given wisdom, everyone whose heart had lifted him up, to come and do the work. And Moshe called and they received from Moshe all the contribution which the children of Israel had brought for the work in the service of making the set-apart place, but they still brought to him voluntary offerings every morning. So all the craftsmen were doing all the work of the set-apart place, each from the work he was doing. And they spoke to Moshe, saying, the people bring much more than enough for the service of the work which Yahweh commanded us to do. Then Moshe commanded, and they sent this word throughout the camp, saying, let neither man nor woman do any more work for the contribution of the set-apart place. And the people were withheld from bringing, for what they had was enough for all the work to be done, more than enough. Then all the wise-hearted ones came among them, who worked on the dwelling place, made 10 curtains, woven of fine linen and blue and purple and scarlet material, and they made them with the cherubim, the work of a skilled workman. The length of each curtain was 28 cubits, and the width of each curtain was 4 cubits, all the curtains having one measure. And he joined 5 curtains one to another, and the other 5 curtains he joined one to another. And he made loops of blue on the edge of the end curtain of one set. The same he did on the edge of the end curtain of the other set. 50 loops he made on one curtain, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the end curtain of the second set. The loops held one curtain to another, and he made 50 hooks of gold, and joined the curtains to each other with the hooks, and the dwelling place became one. And he made curtains of goat's hair for the tent over the dwelling place, and he made 11 curtains. The length of each curtain was 30 cubits, and the width of each curtain 4 cubits, and the 11 cubits having one measure. And he joined the 5 curtains by themselves, and 6 curtains by themselves, and he made 50 loops on the edge of the end curtain in one set, and 50 loops he made on the edge of the curtain of the second set, and he made 50 bronze hooks to join the tent to be one. And he made a covering for the tent of ram skins, dyed red, and a covering of fine leather above that. And the dwelling place he made, and for the dwelling place he made boards of acacia wood, standing up. The length of each board was 10 cubits, and the width of each board 1.5 cubits. Each board had 2 tenons for binding one to another. So he did all to the boards of the dwelling place. And he made the boards for the dwelling place, 20 boards for the south side, and he made 40 sockets of silver to go under the 20 boards, and 2 sockets under each of the boards for its 2 tenons. And for the other side of the dwelling place, for the north side, he made 20 boards, and their 40 sockets of silver, and 2 sockets under the one board, and 2 sockets under the other board. And he made 6 boards for the west side of the dwelling place, and he made 2 boards for the back corners of the dwelling place, and they were double beneath. Similarly, they were complete to the top by 1 ring, so he did to both of them at the corners. And there were 8 boards, and their silver sockets, and 16 sockets, 2 sockets under each of the boards. And he made the bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards on one side of the dwelling place, and 5 bars for the boards on the other side of the dwelling place, and 5 bars for the boards of the dwelling place at the rear, westward. And he made the middle bar to pass through the boards from one end to the other, and he overlaid the boards with gold, and the rings he made of gold to be holders for the bars, and he overlaid the bars with gold. And he made a veil of blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine worked linen. It was made with cherubim, the work of a skilled workman, and he made 4 columns of acacia wood for it. and overlaid them with gold, with the hooks of gold, and he cast 4 sockets of silver for them. And he made a covering for the tent door of blue and purple and scarlet material and fine woven linen made by a weaver, and its 5 columns with their hooks, and he overlaid their tops with their rings with gold, but their 5 sockets were of bronze. Alright, chapter 37. Any comments or questions? Go ahead and type them into the chat room there, and we will discuss that accordingly. Okay, chapter 37. Bezalel made the ark of acacia wood 2.5 cubits long and 2.5 wide and 1.5 cubits high, and he overlaid it with gold inside and outside, and made a molding of gold all around it. And he cast 4 rings of gold for it, for its 4 feet, and 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other side. And he made poles of acacia wood, overlaid them with gold, and he put the poles into the rings at the sides of the ark to lift the ark. And he made a lid of atonement of clean gold, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. And he made 2 cherubim of beaten gold, and he made them from the 2 ends of the lid of atonement, 1 cherub at one end on this side, and on the other cherub at the other end on that side. He made the 2 cherubim from the lid of the atonement from the 2 ends. And the cherubim spread out their wings above, and covered the lid of atonement with their wings, with their faces toward each other. The faces of the cherubim were turned toward the lid of atonement. A couple weeks ago we discussed Ezekiel chapter 1 and Ezekiel chapter 10. They had 4 faces. One of the faces were the cherubim, one was a man, one was a lion, one was an eagle. So we had the 4 faces. We have the faces of the cherubim facing each other. So if we had 4 faces, then we have each face going in each direction from the 2 cherubim. And he made the table of acacia wood 2 cubits long and 1 cubit wide and 1.5 cubits long, and he overlaid it with clean gold, and he made a molding of gold all around it, and he made a rim of a handbreadth all around, and made a molding of gold for the rim all around, and he cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put the rings of the 4 corners that were at its 4 legs. The rings were next to the rim as holders for the poles to lift the table. And he made the poles of acacia wood to lift the table, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the utensils which were on the table, its dishes, its cups, its bowls, and its jars for pouring of clean gold. And he made the lampstand of clean gold, of beaten work, its base and its shaft, its cups, its ornamental knobs, and its blossoms were from it. And 6 branches came out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side. These were the cups like almond flowers on one branch, with the ornamental knob and blossom, and 3 cups like almond flowers on the other branch, a knob and a blossom, for the 6 branches coming out of the lampstand. And on the lampstand were 4 cups like almond flowers, its knobs and blossoms, and a knob under the first 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the second 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the third 2 branches of the same, for the 6 branches coming out of it. Their knobs and their branches were of it. All of it was one beaten work of clean gold. And he made the 7 lamps and its snuffers and its trays of gold, of clean gold. And he made the talent of clean gold, And he made it out of a talent of clean gold, and all of its utensils. And he made the incense altar of acacia wood, a cubit long and a cubit wide. It was square, and 2 cubits high. Its horns were of it, and he overlaid it with clean gold, its top and its sides all around, and its horns he made a molding for it of gold all around. And he made 2 rings of gold for it under its molding, and its 2 corners on both sides, as holders with the poles with which to lift it up. And he made the poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the set-apart anointing oil, the clean incense of sweet spices, according to the work of a perfumer. Alright, chapter 38. And he made the altar of burnt offering of acacia wood, 5 cubits long, and 5 cubits wide. It was square, and 3 cubits high. And he made its horns on its 4 corners. The horns were of it, and he overlaid it with bronze, and he made all the utensils for the altar, the pots, and the shovels, and the basins, and the forks, and the fire holders. He made all its utensils of bronze. And he made a grating for the altar, a bronze network under its rim, midway from the bottom. And he cast 4 rings for the 4 corners of the bronze grating as holders for the poles. And he made the poles of acacia wood, and overlaid them with bronze. And he put the poles into the rings on the sides of the altar with which to lift it. And he made the altar with hollow boards. And he made the basin of bronze. He made the altar hollow with boards. That's what I meant. And he made the basin of bronze, and its stand of bronze, from the bronze mirrors of the serving women who did door at this tent of meeting, who did service at the door of the tent of meeting. And he made the courtyard for the south side of the screens of the courtyard were fine woven linen, 100 cubits long, and they're 20 cubit, and there are 20 columns, and there are 20 sockets of bronze. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And for the north side, the screens were 100 cubits long. There are 20 columns, and there are 20 sockets of bronze. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And for the west side, there were screens of 50 cubits. There are 10 columns, and there are 10 sockets. The hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver. And for the east side, eastward, 50 cubits. 15 cubits of screens on the one side with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets, and 15 cubits of screens on the other side of the courtyard gate, and on this side and on that side with their 3 columns and their 3 sockets. All the screens of the courtyard all around were of fine woven linen, and the sockets for the columns were of bronze, and the hooks of the columns and their bands were of silver, and the overlay of their tops was of silver, and the columns of the courtyard had bands of silver. And the covering for the gate of the courtyard was the work of an embroiderer of blue and purple and scarlet material, and of fine woven linen, and 20 cubits long. And the height along its width was 5 cubits, corresponding to the screens of the courtyard. And the columns were 4, and their sockets of bronze 4. The hooks were of silver, and the overlay of their tops and their bands was of silver, and all the pegs of the dwelling place and the courtyard all around were of bronze. These were the appointments of the dwelling place of the witness, which was appointed by the command of Moshe for the service of the Levites by the hand of Ithamar, son of Aharon, the priest. And Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Yehudah, made all that Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And with him Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and designer, an embroiderer in blue and purple and scarlet material and in fine linen, and all the gold prepared for the work, and all the work that was of the set-apart place, and all the gold of the wave offering came to be 29 talents and 730 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place. And the silver from the ones counted on the congregation was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, according to the shekel of the set-apart place. A bekel, a half shekel for a head, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, everyone passing over to be counted from 20 years old and above, for 603,550 men. And the 100 talents of silver were for the casting of the sockets of the set-apart place and the bases of the veil, 100 sockets from 100 talents, a talent for each socket. And of 1,775 shekels he made the hooks for the columns, and overlaid their tops, and made bands for them. And the bronze of the wave offering was 70 talents and 2,400 shekels. And he made the sockets for the door of the tent of meeting, and the bronze altar, and the bronze grating for it, and all the utensils for the altar, and the sockets for the courtyard all around, and the bases for the courtyard gate, and the pegs for the dwelling place, and the pegs for the courtyard all around. So exactly as we just read when Moshe was told on Mount Sinai how it was to be done, it was done exactly, and we're reading exactly again, exactly how it was done. All these specifications, all these exact dimensions, according to the way it was shown to him on Moshe, the model and the type have to be exact. And we'll get into that in a second. But let's continue now, chapter 39. And of the blue and purple and scarlet material they made woven garments to do service in the set-apart place. And they made the set-apart garments which were for Aharon, as Yahweh had commanded. And he made the shoulder garment of gold and blue and purple and scarlet material, and of fine woven linen. And they beat out sheets of gold and cut it into threads to work it in with the blue and purple and scarlet material, and the fine linen, the work of a skilled workman. They made the shoulder pieces for it to join it They made the shoulder pieces for it to join it. It was joined at its two edges. I think you're reading next week's parashas. I knew that comment was going to come. Yes, John, I am. And the reason I decided to do that, we'll stop right now with what we're doing. I knew that was going to happen. Yeah, we are reading two parashas together. For it. Now, some people use the Hillel 2 calendar, which has everything calculated out perfectly, so they know right now that it is going to be a leap year, or an extended 12th month at our vet with added days to the end of the 12th month, or an added 13th month, however you want to look at it. And we speculate that that is probably going to be that case. But right now, for the benefit of the people who use a visible sign, whether it be of the stars, or whether it be of the barley, that the barley will be ready at the time. That will be next week when they go out to look at the barley to determine whether it's ready or not. And since that has not been determined, I made the assumption that it might still be possible, although unlikely, that the barley will be found to be Aviv. And if that's the case, then this will be a regular year, not a leap year. So I combined these as if it was a regular year. That was just a decision that I made. I hope not to offend anyone, but that was done for the purpose of being all-inclusive for the people who use the barley calendar. That way, if the barley is found to be Aviv, then we will have declaring the next moon to be the first month of the next year. Unlikely as it is still possible, and we have not made that determination yet. So that's the reason I am reading both. I am reading both parashas. I am combining them as if they would be in a regular year, even though most likely this is a leap year, just for the sake of what if. We've had many cases where we have the barley found at times when it wasn't expected to be found, and not found when it was expected to be found. Yahweh works in mysterious ways, and His calendar is set by His determination. So, just to be all-inclusive of that, you're right, I am reading both parashas. I am combining the two right now, and we will make that up when we determine, or how we determine, when it's all determined, and everyone's in agreement that will be a leap year. But just to being a true Karaite, which I'm not a Karaite, but there are many who are Karaites who are very strict on that, and if I were to assume it to be a leap year, I could be held in check by that as well. So that's the reason I did that. Alright, sorry for that, and there's an explanation for why I did that. And actually, for some people, it's still the 11th month for how they look at the calendar. So we have, which means we're actually a month ahead, and we started a month early in the readings. We can't please everyone, and I'm sorry for that. But you're right, I am reading a combined portion as if it would be for a regular year until we determine whether it's going to be a leap year. If that makes any sense. If not, then just accept my apology for doing it that way. I can't please everyone, but I'm trying to. And he made the shoulder garment of gold and blue and purple material and scarlet material of woven linen. And they beat out sheets of gold and cut it into threads to work in with the blue and purple and scarlet material and the fine linen, the work of a skilled workman. And they made the shoulder pieces for it to join it. It was joined at its two edges. And the embroidered band of his shoulder garment that was on... and the embroidered band of the shoulder garment that was on it was the same work of gold and blue and purple and scarlet material of fine woven linen as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And they made the shoham stones set in plated work of gold, engraved as signets are engraved according to the names of the sons of Israel. And he put them on the shoulders of the shoulder garment, stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he made the breastplate a work of a skilled workman, like the work of a shoulder garment of gold, of blue, and purple, and scarlet material, and of fine woven linen. It was square. They made the breastplate double, its length a span, and its width a span, doubled, and they filled it with 4 rows of stones, a row of ruby, a row of topaz, and emerald was the first row, and the second row was a turquoise, a sapphire, and a diamond, and the third row a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst, and the fourth row a beryl, a shoham, and a jasper, set in plated work of gold in their settings. And the stones were according to the names of the sons of Israel, according to their names, like engraved like a signet, each one with its own name according to the 12 tribes. And they made braided chains of corded work for the breastplate and at the ends of clean gold. And they made 2 settings of gold, and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings on the ends of the breastplate. And they put the 2 cords of gold in the 2 rings on the ends of the breastplate, and the 2 ends of the 2 cords they fastened in the 2 settings, and put them on the shoulder pieces of the shoulder garment in the front. And they made 2 rings of gold, and put them on the ends of the breastplate, on the edge of it, which was on the inward side of the shoulder garment. And they made 2 gold rings, and put them on the 2 shoulder pieces underneath the shoulder garment, on the front of it, close to its seam, above the embroidered band of the shoulder garment. And they bound the breastplate by means of its rings to the rings of the shoulder garment with a blue cord, so that it would be above the embroidered band of the shoulder garment, and that the breastplate would not come loose from the shoulder garment, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he made the robe of the shoulder garment of woven work, all of blue. And the opening of the robe was in the middle, like the opening of in scaled armor, with a woven binding all around the opening, so that it would not tear. And they made the hem of the robe and they made on the hem of the robe pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet material twined. And they made bells of clean gold, and put the bells between the pomegranates on the hem of the robe all around. Between the pomegranates, a bell and a pomegranate, all around the hem of the robe, for the service as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. Now previously, I had mentioned that the bells were a sign or a signal that the priest was still alive, that they could listen for the sound of the bells when the priest went in there on the Day of Atonement. Standing at attention, the children of Israel could hear the sound of the bell. And it was written on my heart, Yahweh wrote on my heart, and last couple of days ago, and directed me to go and study the word bell. So that word bell is let's see, how was that pronounced? In Hebrew, and John, you're going to correct me on this because I'm going to butcher it. Pa'amon is the Hebrew word for bell, and we break that down into the Paleo Hebrew, and we see how that works. And we can study that Paleo Hebrew. I'll let you look at that for a second and study that real fast. Yeah, I hate silence, but actually I hate trying to study something where someone's talking to me at the same time. So right now what we have there is the breakdown in the Paleo-Hebrew of the word bell. And we can see, if we go to the next slide here, we will see now how that works out. We have the letters Pei, Mem, we have Pei, Ayin, Mem, and then Nun. And then working that Pei, it's a symbol of a mouth, and it can mean blow, like you blow out your mouth. It can be scatter. It can be edge. And then you have the Ayin, which is, or Ga in the ancient Hebrew was called Ga. Some people believe but it's a symbol of an eye, and it can mean watch, or it can mean know, or it can mean shade, among other uses. And then we have Mem, which is the symbol of water, and that can be chaos, or mighty, or blood. And we have Nun, which is the symbol of a seed, and that can mean continue, or air, or sun. In 1 John 15, okay, we have that slide long enough. We'll go back to me so I can do that now. Okay, in 1 John 15, chapter 1 John 15, verse 26. Yahshua speaking here, and he says, "And when the Helper comes, whom I shall send to you from the Father, the Spirit of the truth, who comes from the Father, he shall bear witness of me." Just as the children of Israel were listening intently to the bells, we are now listening to the Spirit in the same manner. And if you put those words together into your sentence form, if you put those letters and taking key words from those letters into your sentence form, you can have put on the edge of the garment, the bells will put on the edge of the garment, so the people will know that the priest, the mighty priest, continues to live. So that makes sense to me to do it that way. And also in 1 John, not in 1 John, but in the book of John, the Gospel of John, in chapter 16, verse 13, Yahshua says of the Spirit again, "But when he comes, the Spirit of truth, he shall guide you into all the truth, for he shall not speak of himself, but whatever he hears, he shall speak, and shall announce to you what is to come." Alright, so that makes sense how the bells were representing of the Spirit, and we listen to the sound of the Spirit, we listen to the calling of the Spirit, and he will tell us what is yet to come, and he will let us know. Alright, continuing on now. Alright, and they beat... Oh, it went all the way back there. That's why it's supposed to say where we're supposed to be at. Okay, that's why I'm reading things twice. Alright, and they made... And we'll find it here in a second. Again, the computer is doing what it wants to do instead of what I want it to. That's why Microsoft was around, because it can think for me. Okay. Alright, and they made the long shirt. We're in verse 27 of chapter 39. And they made the long shirt of fine linen, the work of a weaver, for Aaron and his sons, and a turban of fine linen, and the turban ornaments of fine linen, and short trousers of fine woven linen, and a girdle of fine woven linen with blue and purple and scarlet material, the work of an embroiderer, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And they made the plate of the set-apart sign of dedication of clean gold, and wrote on it an inscription like the engraving of a signet, set-apartness to Yahweh. And they put on it a blue cord to fasten it above the turban, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And all the work of the dwelling place of the tent of meeting was completed, and the children of Israel did according to all that Yahweh had commanded Moshe. So they did. And they brought the dwelling place to Moshe, the tent and all its furnishings, its hooks and its boards, and its bars, and its columns, and its sockets, and the fine covering of ram skins dyed red, and fine covering of fine linen, and the covering of fine leather, and the veil of the covering, the ark of the witness with its poles, and the lid of atonement, the table with all its utensils, and the showbread, the clean lampstand with its lamps, the lamps to be put in order, and all its utensils, and the oil for the light, and the altar of gold, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense, and the covering for the tent door, the bronze altar, and its bronze grating, its poles, and its utensils, the basin with its stand, the screens of the courtyard, its columns, and its sockets, the covering for the courtyard gate, its cords and its pegs, and all the utensils for the service of the dwelling place for the tent of meeting, the woven garments to do service in the set-apart place, the set-apart garments for Aaron the priest, and his son's garments to serve as priests, according to all that Yahweh had commanded Moshe. So the children of Israel did all the work. And Moshe looked over all the work, and saw as they did, as Yahweh had commanded, so they had done. And Moshe blessed them. Alright, chapter 40. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, On the first day of the first month you are to raise up the dwelling place of the tent of meeting, and shall put it in the ark of the witness, and screen the ark with the veil. And you shall bring in the table, and arrange what belongs on it, and bring the lampstand, and light its lamps. And you shall set the altar of gold for the incense before the ark of the witness, and put up the covering of the door to the dwelling place. And you shall set the altar of the burnt offering before the door of the dwelling place of the tent of meeting, and shall set the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and shall put water therein. And you shall set up the courtyard all around, and place the covering of the courtyard gate, and shall take the anointing oil, and anoint the dwelling place, and all that is in it, and shall set it and its utensils apart. And it shall be set apart. And you shall anoint the altar of the burnt offering, and its utensils, and set their altar apart, and their altar shall be most set apart. And you shall anoint the basin, and its stand, and set it apart. And you shall bring Aaron and his sons to the door of the tent of meeting, and wash them with water. And you shall put the set-apart garments on Aaron, and anoint him, and set him apart to serve as priest to me, to Yahweh. And it shall be his sons, and you shall bring his sons, and put long shorts on them, and shall anoint them as you anointed their father, and they shall serve as priests to me, and their anointing shall be for them an everlasting priesthood throughout their generations. And Moshe did to all that Yahweh had commanded him, so he did. And it came to be in the first month of the second year, in the first day of the month, that the dwelling place was raised up. And Moshe raised up the dwelling place, and placed its sockets, and set up its boards, and put in its bars, and raised up its columns, and spread the tent over the dwelling place, and put the covering of the tent on top of it, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he took the witness and put it into the ark, and he took the poles, and he put the poles through the rings of the ark, and put the lid of atonement on top of the ark, and brought the ark into the dwelling place, and placed the veil of the covering to screen off the ark of the witness, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the dwelling place, outside the veil, and set the bread in order upon it before, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the dwelling place, and lit the lamps before Yahweh, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put the gold altar in the tent of meeting in front of the veil, and burned sweet incense on it, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he set up the covering to the door of the dwelling place, and put the altar of burnt offering before the door of the dwelling place of the tent of meeting, and offered upon it the burnt offering and the grain offering, as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he put the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar, and put the water therein for washing. And Moshe and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and their feet with water from it, and they went into the tent of meeting. As they came near the altar, they would wash as Yahweh had commanded Moshe. And he raised up the courtyard all around the dwelling place and the altar, and placed the covering of the courtyard gate. And Moshe completed the work. And the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the esteem of Yahweh filled the dwelling place, and Moshe was not able to come into the tent of meeting, because the cloud dwelt on it, and the esteem of Yahweh filled the dwelling place. And when the cloud was taken up from above the dwelling place, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out until the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of Yahweh was on the dwelling place by day, and a fire was on it by night, before the eyes of the children of Israel in all their journeys. Alright, the Haftorah for this week is in 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 13 through, basically through 50. What's going on is Yahweh is commanding Moshe to build the dwelling place in the wilderness exactly according to those dimensions. And now we're putting together a type of that as well as the temple. And my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding is the temple had the exact same dimensions, only larger, but the dimensions were kept to be the same. Even though they made things larger, they still made the proportions exactly right. So, that's in a nutshell what was going on there. And Sovereign Shlomo brought Hiram from Zor, and commissioned Hiram from Zor, and he cast 2 columns of bronze, each one 18 cubits high, and a line of 12 cubits, and measured the circumference of each. And then, continuing on here in chapter 7, verse 40, and Hiram made the pots, and the shovels, and the bowls, and Hiram completed doing all the work that he was to do for Sovereign Shlomo on the house of Yahweh. The columns, the bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the columns, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, the 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of them, and the 10 stands, and the 10 basins for the stands, and the 1 sea and the 12 oxen under the sea. Now see, the sea was the basin to wash, and the pots and the shovels and the bowls and all these utensils which Hiram made for sovereign Shlomo in the house of Yahweh were of polished bronze, and the sovereign had them cast in clay in the district of the Yarden between Succoth and Zerthan. And Shlomo left all the utensils unweighed because they were many, nor was the weight of the bronze searched out. So Shlomo made all the utensils for the house of Yahweh, the altar of gold, and the table of gold, on which was the showbread, and the lampstands of refined gold, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left in front of the speaking place. So he had 5 lampstands instead of 1, and the flowers and the lamps and the snuffers of gold, and the basins and the snuffers and the bowls and the ladles and the fire holders of refined gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner house, the most set-apart place, and for the doors of the house of the Hekel. And thus all the work which sovereign Shlomo had done for the house of Yahweh was completed, and Shlomo brought the set-apart items of his father David, the silver and the gold and the utensils, and put them in the treasuries of the house of Yahweh. Now, again, alright, we have another question. Just wondering, when they journeyed, how or where did they find the barley to be able to determine the year? This is Kent. Alright, that is a controversial issue. They don't know how they determined how they found the barley to determine the year, but whatever Aviv means, it means that we know that there is an appointed time for a way sheaf offering, and we can't have the way sheaf offering unless we determine that the barley is going to be ready. And there are many ways of determining that. That can be calculated, as many people do, and some people insist on going out and looking at the barley and seeing if the barley is ready or not. And just for the sake of those people, that is why I decided that we cannot declare whether we're going to have, however you want to look at it, whether you're going to have a extended 12th month or a 13th month added, or some people look at the calendar completely differently in other ways. We're not going to get into calendar issues because there's so many of them. But yeah, just to be all inclusive, for those who insist on looking at the barley, that will be done next week, and we can't declare this to be a leap year until everyone is satisfied. So I again apologize for that. But you do make a good point. How did they determine the barley in the wilderness? Of course, we do know that the Spirit of Yahweh is able to teach us all directly, and so the Spirit of Yahweh will be the ultimate teacher in these matters and tell us when the year begins and when it doesn't. So we have that. But all these dimensions and all these specifications, Yahweh spoke to Moshe and told him to be exact with everything. Do it exactly as he was shown on the mountain. And then we see that it was done exactly as he was shown on the mountain. And this is all a type and shadow of what's yet to come. And Paul says, now we are the dwelling place, and he dwells within us. And that would be in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 11 through 18. And we'll go there real fast. And basically Paul is saying that now we are the temple, and he dwells within us. And I'll read that in a second. That was not the way it was supposed to be. It was already bookmarked and ready to go, but it didn't happen. Alright. Hallelujah. Okay, 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 11 through 18. Okay, for no one is able to lay on another foundation except that which is laid, which is Yeshua Messiah. And if anyone builds on this foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw, each one's work shall be revealed, for the day shall show it up, because it is revealed by fire, and the fire shall prove the work of each one, what sort it is. If anyone's work remains, which he has built on it, he shall receive a reward. If anyone's work is burnt, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, but as through fire. Do you not know that you are a dwelling place of Elohim, and the Spirit of Elohim dwells in you? If anyone destroys the dwelling place of Elohim, Elohim shall destroy him, for the dwelling place of Elohim is set apart, which you are. Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you seems to be wise in this age, let him become foolish, so that he might become wise. Okay, this is a great example that Yah trusted Moshe to advise fellow man, and fellow man can hear and do as Yah requested without hearing directly from Yah himself. Yes, and if we're going to go that direction, we'll go with there is one intercessor between man and Elohim. There is one Elohim, the Father, and one intercessor between man and Elohim, the man Yahshua Messiah. So we do have, Moshe was a type of the intercessor. So Moshe went to Yahweh, and then they heard from Moshe. I think that's the direction you're going there. Let's see. This is a great example. Okay. All right, that's exactly, okay. I know. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kemp, for that comment, and I understood it correctly. All right, thank you. That's all I had there, except one more comment, real fast, on the fact that now we are the dwelling place. I'm most basically speaking to the choir here, but also since it's going to be on YouTube, anyone finding this on YouTube, anyone tuning in here who doesn't have the understanding, we are the dwelling place, and He dwells within us. The dwelling place, the tabernacle in the wilderness, was to make specific instructions. And we have also been given specific instructions on how we are to maintain this body. It says, do not put on a garment of wool and linen combined. We can speculate why that was. It says, the man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that flows out of the mouth of Yahweh. Every word that flows out of the mouth of Yahweh. And so, it also, the mouth of Yahweh has spoken and said, you eat this, you don't eat that. Why? Because that is unclean to you. We can speculate all we want to about that. There are many other instructions on how we are to bind the fringe of our garments, or make fringe on our garments, first of all, and bind it up with a blue cord. There are countless instructions on how we are to have relations with other people. The list goes on and on. But we are given specific instructions on what we are to eat, what we are to wear, when we are to meet, and these instructions should be followed exactly, since we are the dwelling place. If anyone tears down the dwelling place, well, we just read what happens. You can read that again in verse 17 if you wish to. But anyway, I will leave you with that. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and shalom, and may Yahweh bless you. Okay, we have one more comment before I sign off. Only man needs a reason. Yah does not need a reason. He is the reason. Ah, yes. I remember when I was publishing a magazine, I had the front cover of the magazine for the 7th month. Yahshua is the reason for the season. Yes, He is the reason. And He doesn't need a reason. And I agree with everyone. Alright. Shalom, everyone, and may Yah bless.